Member for Maitland.
Well, Mr Acting Speaker, we all know the Premier is a fan of Back to the Future, but in this bill we see the Baird Liberal Government reaching right back past 1985 to 1976, to another time, another state and another Premier. So help me, Joe. Let me start by sharing some extracts from a paper by Christopher Crawford. It was written in 2009 about civil liberties and the Bjelke-Petersen state. So in 1976, a policeman was captured on film striking a female protest marcher on the head with a baton. Moves to hold an inquiry were quickly quashed by the Premier. Shortly thereafter, 12 people were arrested at a hippie commune at Cedar Bay near Cooktown. The hippies claimed that the police burned their food, personal property and dwellings. A television crew produced footage of burned out huts, and Bjelke-Petersen told the press that the allegations made by the hippies were part of a campaign to legalise marijuana and denigrate the police. He stated that some of the evidence was manufactured after the police had left the scene. And on the 5th of September 1977, he declared that the day of the political street march is over. Don't bother to apply for a permit, you won't get one, that's government policy now. And it turns out that the police had in fact torched the homes of those hippies. Charges were laid against 3 policemen, but the prosecutions were unsuccessful. And so began, I'm continuing on with a quote here, a 2-year conflict between the government and what has been called the Right to March movement, during which time over 1,000 people were arrested in the course of many separate protests. Now, I think that this is important for us to recognise here that this is where we're heading with this government. These kind of restrictions on the right of people to have a peaceful protest. And it's interesting that even back then, even Bjelke-Petersen wouldn't actually take the power up to stop peaceful protests. The joint, strictly speaking, in fact, they never abolished the right to march in Queensland. But the problem was that the Premier himself kept taking the view that the government was banning people. The real issue is that, you know, if there is a situation of violence, then we need the police to be able to act, but not to act where people have the right to a peaceful assembly. And usually that right is exercised in order to protest against the government of the day. And I speak about these issues because here we see government busting to get back to those times. Why is this bill not being moved by the Attorney-General or the Justice and Police Minister? And why have we got the Industry, Energy and Resources Minister who consistently misjudges community attitudes to his portfolio, think Bentley and Metgasco, here talking about this? We know that the Premier doesn't like to be disagreed with. We see him up here every day in question time calling on us to clap and applaud the policies of his government. And let us turn to some of those policies of this government that haven't had so much support in the community. The Newcastle rail line, there's been protests about that. How would those protests have fared under this legislation? And what action has the government taken to address the concerns about the lack of consultation, the lack of community will behind what the government was proposing? Well, in that case, they've taken the opportunity to change the law. And that's exactly what this minister is doing here. He understands that people don't like what he's doing, so he chooses to change the law to stop them from being able to express that view. And in my view, that is not a good way for us to contribute to undertake government in this state. In fact, in 2016, it's just appalling. If we look at some other policies that have had a bit of flack in the local media, we could look at local government, Mr Deputy Speaker, and these are things that, this is an area where there's been widespread protests across New South Wales, across the state. There's been protests that government members have participated on this particular issue, and it would be interesting to see how they would be dealt with under this legislation and what action the government will take against people who are protesting its policies in this area that are direct policies, not even the case of a company trying to exploit resources from the ground, but to actually change policy to ensure that their communities are maintained and that they are able to live the lives they want to all over this state. We only have to see, and I'm surprised, I have to say, Mr Speaker, by the torpor that's been demonstrated here. Normally when I get up in this place and say anything against this government, I've got a rabble of people. In fact, if you were here last week when I was speaking about local government, and I asked that and moved a motion in this place that the National Party members of this place should support their communities and come over this side. The discussion that was held, here at the
member for Tweed.
Really carry on.
I was trying to speak, and even in this place, even here, government members were unhappy to hear someone expressing a view that they are not happy with. And we only have to look at when petitions come in to this place, when 10,000 people sign petitions and want to expect that we will get a fair and open debate on those issues, and the government comes in and uses its numbers to shut down the parliament. It's really a problem, and I think what this really goes to the heart of this government, it's really a patronising government that's we'll do this because it's better for the community, and don't worry about what they want, what the community wants, what the community concerns are. Don't worry about what the scientists say. If there's $1 in it, we'll just rip it out and that's all fine. And we're not going to worry about consultation. And if it gets to a stage where we have to do consultation, then what we'll do if there's consultation required on an issue is we'll actually stop any protest happening, and it's easier, to control people if they can't express their views. And I note the speech of the member for Charlestown, particularly where she spoke eloquently about the 78ers, the suffragettes, and other groups in our community who have used protest activity, peaceful protest, to put their views forward. We have lots of people in the federal sphere at the moment protesting against cuts to Medicare. These are all huge concerns for our community to not have the right to do that. Now they'll be criminalised if they pick it, in some cases, on their own land. In the case of the CSG mines, up to 7 years. You could be charged with a crime for being on your own property and expressing your own views. The search and seizure with no warrant. I mean, this is just not even good policy. It's not even a human rights kind of argument that you could put up against this. Like, who would stand up there and say we are going to search and seize people's goods with no warrant? This is against so many eminent lawyers, the Law Society, the barristers. It's just not right. The move-on powers, the obstruction to traffic, applying not just to assembly but also to attendees, but also to observers. Police having veto power over non-violent and peaceful assemblies. These are all acts of a government that is very desperate and knows that it is out of touch with our community and is seeking, in this ambit claim of a bill which overreaches and infringes so greatly on our rights as citizens, that it's just appalling. And I am absolutely astounded that there are members on that side who would actually put their hands up and vote for this kind of legislation. So, yes, I would like to put on the record that I definitely oppose this legislation, and I urge members over there to vote not just with their hearts and their souls, but also with their minds, and think about the consequences of what they're doing, which is a bit novel. Thank you.